All right. I am so excited for this conversation. You are in for a treat. Before we get started, I just want to give you a little background on Jenny. Because it's important for you to know who is sitting here next to me. So Jenny just is a visionary, a powerhouse, and one of the very few self-made female billionaires in the United States. She co-founded PEAK6 in 1997 with just 1.5 million in seed capital as a proprietary options trading firm. And she has since grown it into a multi-billion-dollar financial services and technology giant with a portfolio that includes Apex FinTech solutions. Now, Apex provides back-end technology for over 50% of the applicable U.S. FinTech brokerage industry. So she's a big deal. And her firm represents more than $164 billion in assets under custody. Jenny is also a champion of women's advancement, which follows on to the conversation we just had about the importance of bringing women to the table, right? She founded in 2020, along with her daughter, Juliet, Poker Power, with a mission to teach 1 million people the strategic thinking and decision-making skills that have shaped her own career and life. So that is Jenny. But I'd like to know something about you before we get started. I'd like to see, very quickly, the gentlemen in the room with a show of hands. How many of you have or do play poker? Gents? This is a skewed demo.
This is a skewed demo.
We might be onto something.
That's amazing.
Okay, now for the ladies in the room. How many of you oh, look at that. Okay. I still think we had, okay, so we have a lot of opportunity in this room.
We do.
Because really what we were expecting to see was a big disparity between the men and the women. But I encourage you to ask this conversation at your next cocktail party. Because usually more men play the game than women. And so that's a good place for us to start. Jenny, why is that the case and what got you into the game?
Of course. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And yes, the discrepancy is real in poker. Of the more than 120 million people in the world that play poker, less than 6 or 7% are women. And this is a problem because poker can be a real asset, a real tool in your toolbox for life, work, and money. So I would say the discrepancy exists. Let's think about, maybe another metaphor. So when men and women were starting to drive, of course, men outnumber women by a lot. And that's very similar to what we would see in poker. Today, the insurance tables would tell us it's completely equal. They're both absolutely capable, on average, do it the same. And we believe poker has that capacity, despite the fact that it's a game that's been around for hundreds of years. So what is it? It's historical, it's social, it's cultural, it's all these reasons. But for me, I was, all of you who didn't raise your hand, just 5 years ago, I did not play this game. And the reason I started to play was because of my daughter. My husband came home from her tennis match, a match he thought she should have won, and she did not. And after hearing it, at the end, he finally sort of gave up and said, she needs to learn to play poker, because it really was about the strategy on the court. Now, of course, I walked away because that sounded ridiculous to me. But 2 weeks later, popped into my head, should I teach my 14-year-old daughter to play poker? It still sounds strange, doesn't it? I knew I wasn't.
Also, like to get her to be a better tennis player.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And by the way, I have 3 sons. They all knew how to play, and we had not taught them. And I never would have asked that question about my sons. So, of course, what does an entrepreneur do? We do an experiment. We had 10 girls, 10 moms. The girls were 14 and 15 years old, 8th and 9th grade. And the only reason I'm sitting here with you today is because how profound that experience was for my daughter and for those girls. The confidence that 4 one-hour poker lessons gave to them was in their body. Wow. It was in their soul. It was in every move they made. I don't know why. All I know is I couldn't let go of it. I couldn't stop. But the most interesting thing that happened is, now we're getting into COVID, as I started to learn more, I realized that looks like that trade I did. that poker hand. That looks like that meeting I was in. That looks like
Wow.
that negotiation
Wow.
I just had. Turns out I was playing poker
All along.
all along.
All along.
No wonder all these other traders and business people are good at poker,
Yeah.
primarily men. And I realized that what I had been taught as an options trader on how to take a risk was exactly what was happening in that poker game.
How does poker teach us about risk? Like for somebody who doesn't play poker yet, but clearly we have our marching orders. I mean, let's that be the takeaway.
Yeah.
How does it teach us about risk specifically?
So when we, bring our groups together to teach, the first thing we tell them, every hand is a risk. Every hand that you play is a choice to take your assets, your chips, and use them to get more or to potentially lose them or keep the same amount. So every hand is a risk. And it's not just the risk-taking that becomes the most important part, truly. It's the strategy around the risk-taking. It's the actual capital allocation. How do you use those chips? In life, how do you use your time? At work, how do you use your resources? And so the combination of those things, and then of course there are hundreds of books that are written about that none of the women have ever paid attention to, about how poker so brilliantly reflects life and work.
What do you think that the reason that women are still fighting for a seat at the table is because they don't necessarily have access to some of these sort of this thinking, or they don't necessarily engage in this kind of sort of hard and fast negotiation, and they're a little bit more susceptible to risk taking than men?
So what I found very early on, so we started our firm in the late 1990s, early 2000s, we were on a mission. How do we diversify thought at this firm? We knew that was important to survive, compete against the big guys. And we failed time and time and time again. And as I started to watch where, at what juncture, when we actually, frankly, it was even hard just to get the women there.
Yeah.
But once we got them there, why weren't they rising to the top? And now this is just my experience, all I can own to, but what I saw time and time again was it was decisions around money. It was taking risk. It was right at that juncture where I felt completely comfortable and they did not. Making that decision with imperfect information. Making that decision in a timely way. And as I looked at it, I was like, this options trading thing, it really helped me. But guess what? You don't have to be an options trader to build those skills. But in our play and in our hobbies, girls and women are not doing this. Boys are.
Why do you think that is? Now let's get into a real conversation.
Yes.
Are we just being socialized to handle risk differently? Are we being socialized to women come so over-prepared to the table before they're willing to have the courage to have a voice? Like, what is causing us to have this variation?
I think it is deep and it is wide. The one thing I do know, though, is I didn't have those skills. I grew up in Wisconsin. I went to state school. I wanted to go to the big city that was Chicago. And I was good at math. That did help me. But I was taught this skill. And nowhere in our curriculums are we taught this skill. And so if you happen to get it because you're a young man and you either start to play this game or similar type games or fantasy sports, and it is part of the reason why we see women's sports being so valuable, because there's a lot of that in there. Now, it's not apples to apples, but it's apples to oranges, right? It's pretty close. So we know there are things we can do, and I know this nice little package with a little bow on it that's been sitting under the nose for hundreds of years is a brilliant way to help our girls and women who, they might be mid-career.
Yeah, I mean, you learned,
exactly.
You learned just a minute ago. I expect to see everybody here in 5 years sitting here talking about their poker game.
That's right.
You're bringing poker to the masses. What are you finding out there in the world? Because you're not just doing this in the United States. I'd love to hear you tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing internationally and what the reaction and response has been.
So my whole goal is to get girls before their first job. Of course, that's difficult when you're talking about poker. The interesting thing, it just became a mind sport, like bridge and chess, so that's going to help us. But I also knew I didn't want to fight schools, so I had to get to parents. And sort of accidentally, as we were teaching at our own firm, PEAK6, the families, the kids there, the women were like, if it's so good for them, why aren't we learning?
Yeah.
It was during COVID. Another firm heard what we did, another. Today, we've taught at over 350 of the largest banks in the world, investment banks, legal firms, law firms, in 60 countries. It's extraordinary because you feel it after one hour lesson with Poker Power. And that doesn't mean you're not going to feel it at home learning with your mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
It is that powerful of a game if you're really thinking. And even if you're not really thinking, you have an extraordinary opportunity if you stay with it. So I'll give you two quick examples. Of all places, we are in East Kenya, rural East Kenya, training marginalized girls through the Global Give Back Circle, which the Mastercard Foundation has sponsored. And the woman saw me speak in Abu Dhabi. She thought she would bring this to these young girls. And it's so powerful for them. It is now their leadership program.
Wow.
It's the only leadership program that has worked. It is teaching these young girls how to think, how to negotiate with their fathers so they don't have to carry water 2 days a week instead of going to school. It's extraordinary, the impact. And they don't even know the game there. So, but the opposite side, in the very beginning, I'll just give you this one anecdote. At Senior VP, she learns on a Friday with us. On a Monday morning, she sends me 2 sentences. I realized that I wasn't playing to win. I was playing not to lose.
Wow. Wait, can you say that again? Because I feel like that's also the takeaway.
I realized I was not playing to win. I was playing not to lose.
I have goosebumps.
Right?
I have
Right?
goosebumps. Yeah.
I mean, that's what we hear
Wow.
in this broad age range, from Girl Scouts to CEOs, the impact this poker game can have. And by the way, I think because it's mired in this social, cultural, historical enigma that poker is, that when you get there, I mean, they weren't kidding. How many presidents play poker,
Yeah.
right? How many heads of law firms play poker? You know, Hillary Clinton grew up playing poker. Malala plays poker.
Yeah.
The woman, AMD CEO Lisa Su, is just Time Woman of the Year, grew up playing poker.
Wow.
Right? When you start to, when we're out there talking, that's what we're learning, but nobody's talking about it.
Wow. All right. We are out of time, and I'm so bummed, but we're going to ask you one, because I know right now we want her to teach us. We'll close out with one question. Given the game, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to everybody here who doesn't know how to play the game yet, but is going to learn? But what can they do to sort of manage the hands that they are dealt, no matter what they are? What has the game taught you about how to best handle any hand that you're given?
I appreciate that, because it really is applicable across life to work. I'll give you an anecdote that we talk about a lot internally and externally with our women, which is when you talk about risk, people inherently think jumping out of a plane, going all in, right? It's something big and it's something scary. So we want you to think about risks with an S. This is about quantity. This is about any skill that you can learn. You're going to practice, you're going to exercise your risk-taking muscle every single day. And for different people, it means different things. For some people, it might mean jumping out of a plane. But for a student, it might mean raising your hand in class. For a new entry-level professional, it might be speaking up in a meeting for the first time. So each one of those risks are incredibly important to building that muscle, where now when I have this risk reward, I'm decreasing the negative and I'm increasing the positive.
I love that. Wow. I mean, we could listen to you all day, Jenny, and we're out of time, so we're going to have to wrap up. But please give Jenny Jess a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's so nice. Thank you.